Feeling good, feeling great. Feeling great, feeling good. How are you? Welcome in to another edition of Timeline T. I am your host, the Sam D, aka Sid Usman Jr. Oh, there's a lot going on today. It is a mixture of NBA, great deal of NBA, a lot of fallout from yesterday, fell into today. Big things happening tonight as the conference finals kick off. One game tonight, one game tomorrow, and it'll be pretty much that way all the way through. NBA draft lottery tonight. Who will get Big Vic? Victor Wembanyama. We've talked about Joe Burrow potentially being next up in a line of QBs. Well, that was a thing today. Joe Burrow spoke on it. We will talk about it. What type of bag can we expect Joe Burrow to collect? So we have a little bit of the usual NFL mixed in. There's some breaking news in the media industry for those who are heavy in sports YouTube, like I am trying to be, investigating what's going on over here. Your man's McAfee just cashed out. Bags are out there. If a punter can do it, you can too. Oh man. Good vibes, good vibes, good vibes, good vibes. All right. Just so you know, I didn't want to make this a big part. I didn't want to put it in the topic bar, but just in case you haven't heard, McAfee is cashing out. He is walking away from his 120. Yeah, that's right. That's right. He is walking away from a $120 million deal with FanDuel to join a 4-letter network. The show is expected to remain on YouTube, and McAfee will bring his whole crew with him. That's important. So salute to him, making sure that the people that helped him get that bag roll with him to the next spot. So salute to McAfee in that way. Because some people, they forget who helped put them on, especially people behind the scenes. As me, being someone that's behind the scenes, a lot of the times the talent king, forget what type of time, the way that you have helped them to get to where they need to get to. Sometimes it's just lip service when, talent speaks on help behind the scenes, but McAfee making sure the whole crew comes with him to the 4-letter network. He will earn more than $10 million per year at the 4-letter network. The thing I'm a little curious about with this deal, and I don't want to stay too long on this, is he had a 4-year deal that was $120 million with FanDuel, right? So that's $40 million. That's $30 million. Excuse me, that's $30 million. So the $10 million, take a lesser bag because you're going to get more exposure. So you can double up with the re-up, or maybe the splits are better with the 4-letter network than with FanDuel. Who knows? Who knows? But salute to McAfee. He got that. But you clicked because this happened. So we shall begin. Topic 1. How come that's not firing? There we go. Speaking of firing, Doc Rivers fired. 76ers coach Doc Rivers out after 3 seasons. Okay, so we all kind of knew this was coming. We talked about this yesterday on the live stream. And, this is kind of a foregone conclusion. I don't think anyone is disputing this. I don't think anyone is saying Doc was robbed. I don't think anyone is fighting to keep Doc Rivers in as Philadelphia 76ers head coach. But now it's gone to, all right, we get him out of here. What's next? So the Sixers search for a new coach is expected to include Mike Budenholzer, which is hilarious, bruh. Sam Cassell, and I mentioned that yesterday, like Sam should be a real considerate. He should be really considered to replace Doc Rivers. And if I'm Sam Cassell and they don't choose me, I'm walking. There's no way I'm staying there for whoever is the eventual head coach if it ain't Sam Cassell. No way I'm staying there. Mike D'Antoni, the ties with him and the Beard is a thing. That was a lot of reports about that yesterday. Nick Nurse, who is out here, he was recently let go by the Toronto Raptors. Frank Vogel, got that ring with the Lake Show in the bubble. and Monty Williams. None of these names outside of Sam Cassell spark anything in me from a basketball analyst perspective. None of this says to me, okay, if that guy comes in, culture change. Nick Nurse, maybe. He lost a lot of luster after that ring with Kawhi in them. But, you know, now that he's kind of on, well, obviously he's out, but in terms of the luster has kind of worn off on him. But Sam Cassell, from an X's and O's standpoint, like I said, the best coach on the Sixers was sitting right next to the head coach the entire year, the entire tenure he's been there. So let's see if they give Sam Cassell a real chance. But, you know, that really goes into what is really next for this organization. And continuing with coaching news, quietly, there's been a belief for a while that Mike D'Antoni would be a coaching candidate for the Sixers if Rivers is relieved of his coaching duties while Harden was the Sixers. So clearly, Daryl Morey, Houston. Mike D'Antoni, Houston. The Beard, Houston. So all of them were together in Houston. Can they try to run that thing back one more again in Philly? That would be hella problematic to me. If I was Joel Embiid, that would really be a thing where you kind of feel like Succession. I don't know if y'all watch Succession, but if you watch Succession, there's all the infighting and it's all about teaming up. You know, if you're Joel Embiid, if D'Antoni's the coach, you got to feel like, shit, I'm on the outside looking in. Everyone else is linked. Everyone else is connected, and I got no allies here. So Joel Embiid, if this happens, I'm not saying go in there and request a trade. I'm not saying to go crazy like that. But I do think there is something you need to pay attention to. If you are Joel Embiid and the Houston trifecta is reunited again with D'Antoni, the Beard, and Daryl Morey up top, 7 seconds or less will not work with Joel Embiid. He lumbers up the court as it is right now. He lacks good conditioning, and he's oft injured. The last thing that man needs is to be running up and down the court 7 seconds or less. Like, when's the last time you seen Joel Embiid sprint up the court? I can't call it. I can't recall it. So I don't know the last time he's done that. But when it comes to all of this, Morey is really trying to run this Houston thing back, bruh. And nothing about that tells me that's the right thing to do. Yes, the Beard and D'Antoni got to a conference finals. Or was that with McHale? I think that was with McHale. Yes, that was with McHale. The Beard and Dwight Howard, and we'll get to Dwight Howard. He's airing out a bunch of dudes, including James Harden. I got that sound. We will get to that. And, you know, I think it's come to a point where if I'm the Beard, I don't know why I would stay in Philly. Like, what's the incentive of staying in Philly? If we're to assume Embiid right now is better than James Harden, what tinkering can they do? Because they already had to, you know, they tampered and circumvented the cap to be able to get PJ Tucker and the Beard in there in the first place. So they had to go to extreme lengths just to get the Beard on the pay cut and to get PJ Tucker with circumventing and tampering and all of that stuff. So after you've done all of that, what other moves are there to make? You're not going to find the sucker for Tobias Harris unless you're willing to offload Maxey for a vet that's more proven and ready to win, which I don't know what vet that is. Like, so I don't know what the moves here are for the Philadelphia 76ers. Daryl Morey is a big proponent in threes. It's not necessarily the Warrior style where it's threes, layups, and free throws, even though they don't even get a lot of free throws because they don't really drive to the cup. They're just threes and bunches. Houston pretty much copy and pasted that format. And again, that Warriors thing is a combination of positionless basketball from earlier Warriors teams, like we talked about yesterday, and the threes and bunches, the 7 seconds or less, because Steve Kerr has credited Mike D'Antoni with how, you know, he kind of changed the viewpoint of how offense could be run. So if D'Antoni is there, D'Antoni's offense does not include a big man plodding up and down the floor, setting up shop and holding the rock for 10 to 15 seconds. That's not 7 seconds or less. So I don't know how real of a rumor this really could be. I don't know how legitimate the outcome of Mike D'Antoni becoming the Sixers coach, unless you're telling me they're going to move Embiid. Because there's absolutely no way this works with Joel Embiid. I can tell you right now, if Mike D'Antoni becomes the coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, then you have to move Joel Embiid, because there is no way that plodding 7-foot-plus Cameroonian is going to be running up and down the floor 7 seconds or less. Absolutely no way. We'll see. Scrub Zero in the chat was good. The Philadelphia Rockets. Not in facts though. Like that's what Daryl Morey's trying to do. I mean, that's low-key been the plan the entire time. That's low-key been the plan the entire time. I mean, you know, we put PJ Tucker. You know, we got the Beard. Like once you realize him and the Beard are a package deal, it's kind of like, oh, okay. Then they bring in PJ Tucker. It's like, out of all the dudes gonna bring in PJ Tucker, that's the best you could find? And then you have to consider the tampering that was going on to make that happen? Like, come on, man. You going through all of that for some PJ Tucker? And then in the game that matters most, in the game 7, Tobias Harris and PJ Tucker outscore the Beard and the MVP of the whole damn league? Come on, man. Come on, man. I appreciate those pulling up. I appreciate also if you would hit that like button. The YouTube algorithm does appreciate that. So I appreciate that. So I would appreciate it if you would hit the like button if you haven't already. So that's where we're at with that. Moving on. We mentioned about Dwight Howard. We got some sound to play. And man, Dwight Howard is airing out a bunch of dudes saying y'all need to pull up to Taiwan. All the dudes that underperformed in the playoffs, and you see the list here, and even dudes that ain't even in the playoffs, like Ben Simmons, he's airing them all out. I don't think this will get a strike, but let's see. There's no music on this, right?
Come on. Julius Randle.
Julius Randle.
Come on.
Julius Randle. That's first on the list.
Ben Simmons.
Ben Simmons.
Come on, man.
Ben Simmons pull up. You ain't even make the playoffs, but you could pull up.
Shoot, ain't nobody beating us, boy. Clay, you can slide down here
Clay,
too, boy.
struggling in the playoffs, struggling for shooting threes. DeAndre Ayton.
UNCP3, come on.
Bring the point fraud with you.
KD.
I don't know who's feeding him the lines, but you know, you saw KD as well.
KD.
Hilarious.
Oh, you know who? Hey, they talking about him going back to Houston, but I think this might be a better look. James Harden, come on down here too, boy.
Now, the funny thing about that is, remember, after that 1 year with the Beard and Dwight Howard, he was blamed for why that team failed, even though they made it to the conference finals, in terms of Dwight Howard. So the funny thing about that is, you know, let bygones be bygones. You forced me out. He forced the Beard, got McHale and Dwight Howard up out of there. Like after that trip to the conference finals, because that was seen as the reason why they couldn't get over the hump and get to the NBA finals. It was, oh, well, we got to, you know, Dwight Howard's being Dwight Howard. Even though Dwight Howard, if I believe, was it a torn labrum? He had some really significant injury, and man's really was like playing heavily injured, much like Embiid in this series. But that didn't matter to the Beard. He needed a scapegoat because, again, he choked in the big spot. So then, oh yeah, get Kevin McHale up out of here as coach, bring in D'Antoni, and oh yeah, go ahead and get Dwight Howard out of here. Oh, let's go get this Swiss dude, this what is he, German or Swiss? I forget what Clint Capella. Let's go get this guy, Clint Capella, and he can rim run. It's always, like, you'll notice a trend. That's why Beard and Embiid are so good together, because every year when their teams fail, it's hardly, if ever, their fault. With the Beard, it's been Kevin McHale's fault. It's been Dwight Howard's fault. It's been the point fraud's fault. It's been Eric Gordon's fault. It's been a bunch of dudes' fault. Clint Capella's fault. It's been a lot of people's fault. And it was Russell Westbrook's fault when he was in there for that 1 year. Like, it's been everybody else's fault except the Beard, until everyone was gone. And then who was the last one left? The Beard, James Harden. And then that's when he forced his way out of there, because now the pressure is solely on me and I ain't it. And deep down, I know that, because I've been shrinking in the playoffs since I was in OKC coming off the bench when we made it to the NBA Finals. So that is just what it is. And now Embiid, same thing. Ben Simmons, Jahlil Okafor, Nerlens Noel, Markelle Fultz. You know, it's everybody else's fault. Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, is that Robert Covington? It's everybody else's fault except Embiid. So now what happens when you got two dudes who don't want to really be in the spotlight but have this pressure to be the man in the spotlight are now in the same squad? This is going to be a very interesting offseason to watch with the Philadelphia 76ers. There's going to be a lot of things to pay attention to, and I'm not quite sure how to call this, to be quite honest with you. I could jump out here with a hot take and act like something's going to be popping off and whatever. People that I know in the industry are saying it can go many different ways. Like, there's no clear-cut favorite. Obviously, it's very fresh. It just happened with Doc Rivers. But, I mean, we all knew this was coming anyway, but even with all of that, there still hasn't really been a lot of tea in regards to, well, who actually is going to be the person to step up here and take over this franchise? Because you got to deal with Daryl Morey. And who wants to deal with Daryl Morey? Because it's not like Daryl Morey is one of those laid-back GMs. He's not. He's very proactive. And ownership and high-level executives want, because, look, they've gone through Hinkie with the tanking. Then Colangelo tried to clean that up. And then he got caught up in the scandal of his own. And now we got Daryl Morey, who is an extreme high-level micromanager. Good luck with whoever's going to be the head coach walking in. At least Sam Cassell, he's been there. So he knows how Morey's going to give it up. But if you're Coach Bud, he's a figurehead. He was a figurehead in Milwaukee. How you think he's going to do being under Daryl Morey? Same shit. He was a figurehead in Atlanta. So I don't know what this looks like for the Philadelphia 76ers, but it doesn't look like nothing good on the horizon. Because this roster is very limited in terms of how you're going to improvement unless you're willing to unload some key young pieces, and that really the only young piece to offload that's of any value is Maxey. All right, Boogie Down tapping in. Dwight Howard is a whole clown. He can be that. Off the floor, he can be that. But on that floor, peak D12, problem. Howard is a has-been. I don't know if I would, in comparison to his prime, sure, but he's old. But I think he could give you more than a lot of these guys that have been getting some run. Like, I think and that was always the problem with me watching Dwight Howard was I still think he had a good amount left because the game moved away from him in terms of where all the bigs felt like they had to like transition from post guys to three-point guys like Brook Lopez. But now we've seen the game kind of revert back to where you could be a post presence defensive like center and still be productive. Because there was a clear 3-year window where it looked like if you were a traditional center, you were going to lose a job, bro. You were out of work in the NBA if you did not have the ability to stretch your game to the outside, to move your game to the perimeter. And we saw like Dwight Howard tried to adapt. He just wasn't that good. Wasn't he in the three-point contest in Taiwan? Isn't he trying to he's still trying to figure it out. And it's like, no. You could go beat Clint Capella. If Clint Capella can exist today, why can't Dwight Howard at whatever big age he is exist today? Give me Dwight Howard right now over Clint Capella. Like, if you're telling me Clint Capella, like, look at what Robert Williams single-handedly changed the conference semis in the Philly-Boston series. Single-handedly, just his presence of, he doesn't have to score. He doesn't have to do anything. He just sets screens and then takes his ass to the paint and tries to box out, grab offensive boards, clean the glass, run in transition, occasionally rim run. Like, you telling me Dwight Howard can't do that? He damn near invented that. So I don't think he's a has-been. It's just in this league, a lot of it has to do with relationships. A lot of it has to do with reputation. And Dwight Howard does not have good on either of those. So unfortunately, because it's based off relationships and whether people like you, Those are two things that Dwight Howard has not really endeared himself to the masses. We got that out the way. All right, so here's a story. Via Mark Stein, who is a blue check boy, formerly of the New York Times, I believe, but he was at the Four Letter Network for a very long time. According to sources close to the issue, and again, always remember these words are chosen very carefully. According to sources close to the issue, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green all returning to the Warriors next season is the most likely scenario. Now, there's been a lot of stuff going on in regards to what the hell is going to happen with Draymond. There's been a lot of rumors about him walking away. There's been, people have been making memes up about him and LeBron and all that stuff, and maybe him connecting with the Lake Show. But ultimately, the Warriors can still pay him the most money. And at the end of the day, Draymond is never going to be treated as a king anywhere else but the Bay. So it makes all the sense in the world why he would want to stay, and he's been on the record saying as such. To me, though, I don't know why the Warriors would do it. I have no idea why the Warriors would go and give Draymond the deal he's probably going to get, which is, if not a max, very close to it. Why would you do that at his big age? Because if you're trying to get back to where they were last year and beating Boston for the chip, another year of age and wear and tear on Draymond. Another year, and Klay is up for an extension. So Klay, you're going to max out Klay? So we know Steph ain't going nowhere. Lifetime contract, even without signing one, right? But it's the Klay Draymond thing. How many more years you want to run this back? How many more good years you think you can run back the Splash Brothers and then the trifecta here, and Iguodala's still hanging around too? I'm not sure. I'm not bringing back Draymond if I was the Warriors. I'm moving on. We have youngins on this roster that could get some run and can learn on the job. That's low-key what they should have been doing this entire time, but Steve Kerr, chose not to really put them out there and see if they could sink or swim. So unfortunately, there's a lot of youngins on this roster that have been taken with all these extra draft picks that the Warriors have been able to amass in various trades over the years, but we really can't see the fruits of that reward. Again, they tricked off that pick with Weissman when they should have took LaMelo. They had to eat that bullet and try to go get 5 second-round picks for the second overall pick just so they could go get Glove Jr. back when they could have re-signed him in free agency. So it's really just a weird thing going on. Like, remember, there was a long time where, Bob Myers and, what's the guy's, Lacob, the owner, it was like, oh, they revolutionized basketball just because they were able to draft Steph and Klay and then built this thing with, Draymond Green, Harrison Barnes, Andrew Bogut, that first Dubs run. But now, and Bob Myers could potentially be on his way out as well. His contract is up. So it's not even a guarantee that the guy that allegedly built this revolutionary basketball squad is even going to be there next year. So the way that we talk about this Warrior team, we're ignoring a lot of the missteps that the front office has done in kind of retooling on the fly, rebuilding on the fly, or, supplanting the losses of vets. Otto Porter left last year. Like, you're supplanting those guys with, a Kuminga, with a Moses Moody, with a Ryan Rollins, with a Patrick Baldwin Jr., but they're not getting no run. So that's why you have to keep spinning the block on a Glove Jr., because Moses Moody ain't getting no run. Kuminga's not getting no run. We'll head to the chat. Boogie Down. Draymond is nothing more than a role player at this point. I mean, has he ever been anything but that? I think even peak Draymond was a role player. The funniest stat line about Draymond and his impact, and I'm calling him by his name a lot when I normally call him the habitual nut hitter, but I'll let him slide for the better part of the stream today. When it comes right down to it, like, Draymond had the best Game 7 performance of that like year that they blew the 3-1 lead. Like, he had a way better game. He was the only one that really showed up in that team that tricked off that 3-1 lead out there in 2016. That to me showed me like, oh, maybe he could be more than a role player, but I really haven't seen too many more performances since then. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, nah, he just flashed that one game because these two were too busy tricking it off. And they were clearly in their heads because, you know, LeBron and Kyrie were just ISOing your man's the fraudulent 2-time MVP with trash-ass ankles, Steph Curry. So anyway, that's the story that's going along. There's a piece in The Ringer in regards to what the Warriors can do. There's a lot of conversations about the youngins in this team and them really not understanding how to go about, you know, how to play in today's game. So I'll read this little part here. Golden State's young players grumbled that they weren't getting enough opportunities. And when the youngins complained about inconsistent playing time, veterans scratched their heads, wondering why their tales of yesteryear weren't resonating. So here's how they tried to sell this with the youngins. Guys like Iguodala, because if you remember, when Steve Kerr got there, Iguodala was a starter. And Kerr moved Iguodala to the bench in favor of Harrison Barnes. And then that's kind of when that lineup of depth thing kind of really formulated and took on itself, right? So him and other guys that were vets, Otto Porter, not necessarily Glove Jr., he's still relatively young. But, you know, all the vets that they have had come through there, they all have been really trying to sit down with these youngins and school into the game of, yo, we know you want to hoop, but buy your time, learn by watching, learn and practice, whatever. You know, trying to say, look, you're going to get your time, but you just got to hold it down. But apparently these youngins, these youngins are different, bruh. These youngins are different. They're really not out here trying to wait. So the departures of Otto Porter, Juan Toscano Anderson, and Glove Jr., three figures in the locker room who had respect of both the young players and the veterans, further widened the divide. So essentially the locker room in the Bay is basically the old heads and the youngins. And the vets, like Otto Porter, Juan Toscano Anderson, and Glove Jr., were kind of the bridge between the old heads and the youngins. But when those guys left, there was nobody in the middle there to help fill in that gap and bridge the gap. So the old heads were on one side and the youngins were on the other, and there was definitely a personality clash. And Iguodala, you know, he spoke on it. And let me see, where's the quote? Is it right here? Guys were really, we had vets coming off the bench. Guys were really stable in their roles. Iguodala said in April, I think when I say stable, you know exactly what you're doing when you get in the game. And this year has been a little bit more variables and just making sure that those things don't get in the way of the success of the team. Because it's natural, because we're human beings. So I'm not saying anybody did that. That's the normal NBA. And we haven't had to deal with normal NBA. We've been in fantasy land for so long, and this year was more like the real NBA. So he's telling you, the youngins didn't know what their role is, and that's, I think, largely on Steve Kerr. Because why should Jonathan Kuminga not know when he's going to play or not? Why should Jonathan Kuminga not know who he's really behind in the depth chart? When A. Wiggins was gone all that time, why wasn't Kuminga being force-fed? These are real questions. And now we have another offseason where it's like, well, what do they have in Kuminga? Moses Moody got some run. If we really want to go into the dubs and break this down real quick, Moody got some run. Let's see. Yeah, Moody got, you know, he played 63 games, but how many starts? He only got 3 starts. So who started these games? When Wiggins was out all that time, who got the starts? Kuminga only got 16 starts. So if we're going by games started, it must have been Poole. They must have went Jordan Poole and DiVincenzo. Because Moody only got 3 starts and Kuminga only got 16 starts. And it's what? Year what for Kuminga? 3 or 2? Heading into his 3rd year. And we still really don't know. But I myself and others that are in and around the league are very high on Jonathan Kuminga. And before, in that playoff run last year, I was begging for Steve Kerr to do it and just give him more minutes. And he never really did it until, what was it? It was in the finals, and he finally unleashed Kuminga. What was that, game 4, I want to say? Either game 3 or game 4, he finally unleashed Kuminga, and he was serviceable, and he gave you something. And I'm like, yo, that's all you can ask for from a guy that's a rook. The kid is 19 years old. You drafted him. You were able to get a steal in him. Now, again, obviously, he's a guy that, played ball here in New York and New Jersey, so not necessarily biased there, but I knew of him. But in regards to understanding what his skill set was, it's not that hard once you see him play a few times. Like, oh, no, he can go. He's an active body at the least. But your man, Steve Kerr, don't like playing the youngins. And now there's going to be a lot of guys you're going to have to figure out. What is Jonathan Kuminga? What is Moses Moody? What is Patrick Baldwin Jr. or Ryan Rollins? You still got Ty Jerome, but I think he's 5th out of that 5-man query right there. So the Warriors have some real things to figure out, bruh. Moving on. Is there racism in Monty Williams being fired? Your man's Captain Jack, I will not play it because I know for sure that will be a copyright, but your man's Captain Jack, Steven Jackson, who we brought up yesterday when we're talking about the We Believe Warriors. When teams come together like this, they're quick to go and find a white coach, just throw him in that position so he can get all the credit. I think this is one of the laziest takes ever. I really almost didn't even want to put it out here because it's such a lazy take. Because as much as you want to talk about an owner coming in and making his presence felt and maybe hiring someone that looks like him, because most, if not all of the owners except for Michael Jordan are white, and I guess Joe Tsai in Brooklyn are white, that's just not true though. It's just a lazy narrative. And that's the problem when we empower athletes to be analysts or experts when they're really just former athletes. Like, when's the last time you heard Steven Jackson actually break down something in terms of basketball? We've heard locker room stories. We've heard opinions. But when have you actually seen or heard him actually break shit down like how Tim Legler does on the 4-Letter Network? I haven't seen it for a very long time, and I really can't recall if I even seen it at all. But he's out here pushing narratives to get clicks. Let's see, where they at? I mean, 13,000, that ain't even a lot, to be quite honest. So clearly it didn't resonate because it's not true. So like, he tried to jump out the window with the hot take, and it didn't even register because it's only got 13,000 views. So I mean, dudes just be lying, bruh. Dudes just be lying. Okay. Hit the chat real quick, Boogie Down. Unfortunately, it's the end of a dynasty. I feel they'll give it one more year, Boogie Down. I think they'll. The problem is you re-sign Draymond. Let me see if I can find that contract. Hang on. I mean, if you got to give Draymond max money, bruh, then you're really going to rule that contract on the back half. Like, they need to find a way to front load that John or something, because it's really going to be Golden State Warriors. All right, let's see. All right, so Draymond's coming off a year making $27 million. Okay, so he's obviously going to want 30 to 40 mil. He's going to want 30 to 40 mil. How can you justify that? Let's see. Free agents. There we go. All right, so yeah, Draymond, I mean, he's 33 years old, bro. So DiVincenzo, I don't know why they would bring him back. Again, because you have Moses Moody. Moses Moody should be the guy that replaces Dante DiVincenzo. JaMychal Green, I mean, I wouldn't, oh, my bad. I can't see the little beginning there. There we go. JaMychal Green, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't bring him back. He had that one game because they went small, and then the Lakers figured that out real quick and exposed him. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we let a lot of these dudes go, to be quite honest with you. Like, you give the bag to Draymond, I guess you kind of have to bring back Iguodala. If you're going to run it back with Draymond, you might as well run it back with Iguodala. And I think he's tweeted as much that he's not retiring. But JaMychal Green and all these other dudes who ain't really that significant, it's time to unleash the youngin', Steve Kerr. JaMychal Green, okay, you got Kuminga, who can give you similar types production and could grow to be a better player than JaMychal Green if you unleash him. Dante DiVincenzo, at the bread he's going to want, I think you can get better production or similar, if not better production, with Moses Moody. And if it's not going to be Kuminga, then maybe you dust off Patrick Baldwin Jr., who can go. He's a bucket. He's very much like a Michael Porter Jr. And then Ryan Rollins can also be in this mix for that two-guard spot. So, again, they go too deep at positions where they have, free agents at. So you let JaMychal Green and DiVincenzo go, and then you could supplant them with Moses Moody and Kuminga, Moses Moody and Ryan Rollins for Dante DiVincenzo and JaMychal Green. You could let him go and supplant it with Kuminga and or Patrick Baldwin Jr. But that's up to Steve Kerr. Will he actually do it? Hella problematic. Hella problematic. And then you got Klay on the extension, right? Where's that contract? Active contracts. Yeah, Klay got the 5-year max, bruh. It expires after next year. So that's why he's up for an extension this year. You can't extend him yet. You cannot extend him, especially when you got this Jordan Poole contract. And Jordan Poole is quoted as saying he's not expecting to be gone. And Steph Curry in that Ringer article I was reading from a few minutes ago, he basically said that Jordan Poole is the key to this. And that's a strong statement coming from Wardell. I don't know if that was just to, make sure the locker room is straight, because in the article it said that he said it loud enough for the locker room to hear that Jordan Poole is the key to the next wave of where this Dubs thing goes. And that to me is like hella suspect, bruh. That's hella suspect. I would not have the faith in that at all. At all. All right, so we got that out the way. Scrub Zero, you see this? Knicks are the favorite to land Russell Westbrook if he leaves the Clippers. How hilarious would that be? You talk about black holes. If they somehow keep Julius, 3 black holes in Russell Westbrook, Jalen Brunson, and Julius Randle. Can you imagine watching that offense? But let's look at the favorites. If it's not the Clippers, the Knicks are a 2-1 favorite. The Bulls are 3-1. Spurs here. The Heat are here. Rockets, he's not. Especially if the beer goes back, he is definitely not going to Houston. The Wizards, that might have been the last time Russie was still Russie. Him and Brad Beal played well together, strangely enough. It's just that Wizards team is never going to be anything with Bradley Beal being your best player. Charlotte Hornets, he could be there to hold it down until LaMelo comes back, maybe. OKC, run it back to OKC. SGA, Giddey, there's no room for him. Imagine Russ coming off the bench for SGA and Giddey. And then they got Chet pulling up next year and maybe Victor Wembanyama after the lottery tonight. Who knows? And then who else? Well, I can't see it here, but they got the Brooklyn Nets here 14-1. That's widely been rumored. They have Orlando, Portland, and Detroit on that list as well. So Russell Westbrook, where do y'all think Russie goes if he does indeed leave the Clippers? I don't know why the Clippers would let him go, especially when he looked so good with the Clippers. It took a while. It took a few weeks, but once he got cooking, I mean, Russ is still going to be Russ. And it seemed like, there was a lot of not animosity, what's the word? There was a lot of friction in regards to PG vouched for Russell to be with the Clippers, to be signed by the Clippers. And they had to clear it with Kawhi, and PG had to convince Kawhi, allegedly, of course, had to convince Kawhi that, nah, I'm telling you, Russie can cook here with us. And it looked bad in the first couple of weeks, but then they eventually got that thing going. But I don't know if I'm that keen on signing Russell Westbrook, especially for the money he's going to want. It's not like he's going to take the vet minimum or anything like that at this point. Okay. Y'all see it. Luka Doncic linked to 2 teams as Mavericks trade rumors intensify. Luka Doncic linked to 2 teams as Mavs trade rumors intensify. Thank you for repeating the headline twice. So, from Tig McMahon from the 4-Letter Network, he's made the rounds. There are 2 blue check boys that are out here talking about how much longer Luka Doncic will stay or remain in Dallas. Team sources have acknowledged to the 4-Letter Network that fear exists that Doncic, who publicly and privately expressed extreme frustration this season, could consider requesting a trade as soon as the summer of 2024 if Dallas doesn't make significant progress by then. Okay. 2 teams have emerged as the likeliest landing spots for Luka. According to John Hollinger of The Athletic, the Utah Jazz are, quote, keeping a very interested eye on Luka Doncic. So we have the Utah Jazz with, your man's, the Scamadum Dea, Danny Ainge, and all them picks. Wait, he's got like 12 first-round picks or something. He's got all them picks. Could he use a boatload of that to swing for Luka? Hollinger goes on to say, with my spies telling me that Utah in particular is keeping a very interested eye on Luka Doncic situation, even the Nets' kitchen sink offer for Doncic, the 4 first from the Phoenix trade, from the KD trade, and 1 from the 76ers in the Ben Simmons trade, plus whatever matching salary not named Bridges is needed to make the deal work, and that likely falls massively short. So basically, Utah has the most ammunition to potentially swing a trade for Luka Doncic, and we all know how Utah will receive Luka Doncic. And I'm not going to say this guy's name because he's somewhat of a fraud, but the Knicks are also mentioned here. So, but again, you always have to remember stuff when it comes to people in New York reporting stuff about the Knicks. A lot of it is just propaganda. When's the last time a Knicks rumor actually came true? Think about it. When's the last time a big superstar that's been rumored to go to the Knicks actually came true? I can tell you, it's never happened. It's never come true. Only Melo. I'll give you Melo, but that's about it. Every other rumor of a huge superstar forcing their way to New York, it's never happened outside of Melo. So the alleged reporting here is that they'll be able to offer 7 unprotected picks and 4 swaps to Dallas in the Doncic deal. But perhaps more importantly, they have one of the few players likely to make an effective recruiting pitch to Doncic and Jalen Brunson. So here's where the reporting falls small. If you paid attention to last year, Luka Doncic and Jalen Brunson did not get along on the basketball court. I'm not speaking to the locker room or anything like that. Luka Doncic and Jalen Brunson cannot play together. They cannot play together. So the fact that this guy that is claiming to be a reporter, insider, whatever, is saying that, oh, they got Brunson so he can recruit Luka. Dog, you didn't watch Brunson and Luka have to play off the floor together? You didn't watch J. Kidd stagger the minutes Because Brunson was cooking, and anytime he was cooking and he put Luka back in the game, Brunson didn't get the rock no more. These people don't know basketball. They're not watching the games. They're just saying shit. This dude clearly doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Jalen Brunson, the last thing he wants is Luka to pull up to the Mecca. That's the last thing he wants. Like, bruh, can we stop caping? And I know Scrub Zero, you asked me why I hate the Knicks. This is why. Shit like this. This dude clearly didn't watch any Mavericks games. But he's out here saying, oh, well, the Knicks have Brunson, and they got a whole bunch of picks, and they have Brunson, and he could recruit Luka, when those two dudes couldn't share the rock together when they were on the court together. The Mavericks didn't make that run deep into the playoffs until J-Kidd figured out, oh, these dudes can't be on the court together. They both are ISO dominant. You gonna give up all these picks, 7 unprotected picks, 4 swaps in the Dallas deal, just so you can stagger their minutes? Come on, bruh. Watch more games. Scrub Zero. And the only reason the Knicks got Melo is because he's from New York. Yeah. He wanted to come home to Red Hook. So it's like, dog, the Knicks never get free agents. If they can't build through the draft, that's the only way that franchise will ever get better. Yes, they hit on Brunson. That's great for them. They also got him at great value because I don't know how many other teams were going to give him the bag he was getting from the Knicks. I think teams were willing to pay him, but not the bag the Knicks were willing to pay him because they were still kind of waiting and seeing. But anyway, it's just weird, man. Like, you see stuff, I see stuff like this and it really bothers me because it's like, dog, you're just saying that to get clicks because this deal will never happen. And if by some miracle it does happen, it will not happen because Jalen Brunson is on this team. It's because Luka Doncic really wants out of Dallas. Weirdo shit, man. Really, really weirdo shit. Do we have the on-off minute? I won't go on a deep dive, but maybe in the summer when shit slows down, I'll do a breakdown of how bad it got with Brunson and Luka Doncic because it was really bad where they just could not be on the floor together. They could not be on the floor. All right, Boogie Down, airing out the dubs. Let's see. Problem is the Warriors have the very costly Warriors Arena in San Francisco. The Warriors can't take a chance with the younger guys and it being bad. The rich techie fans won't show up to games. As long as they got Steph, those dudes are showing up. Steph is the biggest thing going out there. As long as they got Steph, and Steph is pretty much signed to a lifetime contract, just like with Under Armour, they'll still show up. So I see the point you're making, and let's be clear, that Chase Arena prints money. It prints money. Those season tickets have been sold out for years. People bought multi-year packages. So maybe the point about them needing some money and not being feared of selling out might happen a few years from now, but they locked in so many people, Boogie Down. Unless you know something I don't, because I know you're out there on the left coast, so put me on. But from what I was told, they cashed out so much during the peak of that run when they were signing this, not signing, they were building this arena up and opening it up. They cashed out so many season tickets and multi-year packages. Like, I don't know. I think they're good for a while. And Steph ain't going nowhere. Steph ain't going nowhere. As long as Steph is there, that arena will be packed. If Corey's in here, Corey traveled all the way. Well, he was out there for work, but he made sure to go see a Dubs game. And it was only because of Steph. No other reason. Warriors, Boogie Down. Warriors ownership sold out for the rich tech event who aren't even really ball fans and ditched the true Warrior fans in the Bay Area who were supporting through thick and thin. No, that's facts. That part is facts. Yeah, they definitely left Oakland. And yeah, that's I mean, but that's kind of the industry, bruh. I'm not saying it's right, but that's sadly the industry. That's where we're at right now. Because I could tell you, like Barclays, like when Hove was there, it was very much a polarizing thing, right? Because to get that arena built in Brooklyn, they had to kick out a lot of low income minority buildings. Like, they had to tear down and move and stop building a lot of low income housing that would have went to mostly minority families. But they slapped Jay-Z on the front of it and people were just okay with it. Now it's years later and those people are still displaced. And Barclays, if you look at it and who's in that arena, is not a lot of people that look like me. But, it had the cachet early of having, the Russian billionaire Hove coming in. I own the seats. I got a 40-40 in there. Like it was very much capitalist Hove. And now it's a few years later. Besides that 40-40 and some people that work in the concessions, where are we? Anyway, Scrub Zero. I can't blame you for hating the Knicks. The media here is too finicky and the team can't build and maintain the team. Yeah, the media here is the worst, man. Like that's like the gift and curse in being in this media thing. It's kind of like, I don't really like it. I really don't like certain parts of it because there's so much bias. There's a lot of hometown Knicks fans that then go on to work in the media, and it's so clear their bias in the fandom. And not that you can't be a fan, even though I think fandom is a mental illness. But when you work this job, when you're in the locker room, when you're traveling with the team, when you're in the arena while they're putting their pregame work in, you can't be fanboying. You can't be fanboying. But unfortunately, a lot of these people do be. I've seen it for myself. People out here trying to chop it up with players like they're on their level, trying to establish relationships, trying to, get videos for Twitter or Instagram or even on here, trying to get quick videos, make it seem like, oh, I'm so close to the players, look where I'm at type shit. Like it's weirdo stuff, man. Really, really weirdo stuff. Scrub Zero. If anything, the Knicks would probably have to trade Brunson to get Luka, and while Luka is a great talent, we're going to be more or less same. That's a good point. Although I think you could get a Luka trade done without Brunson. I think you could get a Luka trade. Well, I guess let's go to Spot Track because I think that's where we need to figure out the money. New York. Clearly, Julius is in that deal. Julius and probably Barrett or active contracts. Well, yeah, let's see, multi-year. Okay. Yep, Julius is definitely in that deal. Who else? Damn. Well, you can put... I think you got to go Julius and RJ. Or maybe you go RJ and Fournier. I wouldn't do Fournier, but he is an expiring deal. Every trade imaginable, people just throw Fournier in there just because they want to get out from underneath that contract. I think you go RJ. I would trade RJ before I would trade Julius. But to make the money work, you might have to go Julius. He's more of a proven commodity. Like if you're the Mavericks and you're actually going to move on from Luka, you cannot just come back with just RJ Barrett as the jewel of that trade. So you're going to have to bring back something more proven and established. And I think that's Julius. If you can sweeten it and still get RJ in there too, and then a shit ton of picks, then I think that's something that's feasible. I still wouldn't do it if I'm Dallas. And that's why it's kind of like, well, if I'm Dallas, yeah, they got all these picks. Like, do they have the picks? Future draft picks. Like, they got all these picks, right? They got four first-round picks in 2024, 5 in 2025. I think some of these are swaps. 3 and 26, 2 and 27. So over the next 4 years, they have a shit ton of first round picks. But I don't know if that's enough for me. Because if you're Dallas and you're moving on from Luka, you're changing the whole identity of your team. And if you're going to do that, you need someone who you can figure out, okay, this guy's going to be the new lead dog of this team. Because there's nobody else on that roster who fits that criteria. So if you're going to do that, like it's not going to be Tim Hardaway Jr., it's not going to be, Bertans or Kleber or, definitely not JaVale. Like there's not a lot of dudes here. There's no, like, even if you bring back Kyrie, you don't want to build a team around Kyrie. Christian Wood, maybe he comes back, but even he's not a guy you're going to build around. So there's nobody here. If you unload Luka, there's no one here who you can now build around. So even if you make the deal for Julius and RJ, there's still no dude you can build around. So the Knicks are not, people get gassed off these picks with the Knicks. You need actual players who can go right now too, not just a shit ton of picks in the future. Boogie down. Would you take Luka over a prime Steve Nash? Well, I am a point guard guy by trade. I played the point back in the day, and I was a facilitator. I could shoot too, but I got more fun out of facilitating. Luka is more skilled offensively. Nash is elite. He's top tier. He's godlike at facilitating, running an offense. He's a very good shooter as well. Like the shooting thing. Let me do that comparison, Boogie Down. Let me do that comparison because I might need to refresh on. I know Steve Nash is one of those 50, 40, 90 guys. Let's see. Peak Nash. What years of them MVPs? 20 what? All right, so they don't tell. This little bugaboos with Basketball Reference. All right, so let's just say in here. He's giving you 19 and 11, 19 and 12. Is it 50, 40, 90? Yeah, 50, 40, 90. He gave you a 50, 40, 90 year in 05. Didn't miss any time. I think I'm going to go Nash, Boogie Down. I think give me Nash. Both are defensive liabilities. Yes, Luka is bigger, so he could do some work in the paint. But I think Nash, even though he definitely has his weaknesses and he could be exploited, so I'm not saying he's not a guy that you can't hunt on defense, especially. But from my point of view of how I like to not just play basketball, but enjoy basketball, give me Steve Nash. Because Luka, he's just Slovenian James Harden. He is a Slovenian version of James Harden. And that is some ugly basketball to watch, bruh. It's ugly as fuck. And as much as I love basketball and love watching basketball and all types of basketball, like if I have my choice, I'm going with Steve Nash because I know I'm going to enjoy that basketball. That brand of basketball is going to be fun. I still enjoy fun, and I can still find fun in the NBA. That's why you need League Pass to do it sometimes, because sometimes these national games are mid, but like you can find like the Kings this year. The Kings were fun, lighting the beam and all that shit. The Kings were fun, but for me, I'm going with Steve Nash. I had to see the numbers to remind me, but I'm going with Steve Nash over Luka. Scrub Zero. I was speaking more on the player fit than the money fit because, like you mentioned before, Brunson Luka can't really play on the floor together. And you get, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that then. Okay, I didn't know that's where you was going with that. Yeah. I think Luka. Mitch Rob would love Luka. Mitchell Robinson would benefit the best from Luka coming to New York. I mean, clearly the shit's not going to happen, but it's like, if you have to like picture it or envision it, Mitch Robb benefits the most. He's a guy that needs help. Like he's like DeAndre Ayton. He needs someone to give him the ball, to get him the ball. He can't score on his own. So Luka will do that way more than Jalen Brunson. So yeah. Boogie down. I'm not sure Luka is more skilled than Nash. Offensively, Nash had better handles. I agree with that. Nash does have better handles. Nash game looks smoother. Luka game looks sloppy as fuck. No, I agree with that. I think that's a fair assessment. I think that's a fair. I think that's a fair assessment. I agree with that. I think ultimately, you know, as I said, like, because Luka's game is so much like James Harden, and even though the beard was dominant in Houston, it was ugly basketball to watch. It's a bunch of fucking step backs, side step threes. Like, he revolutionized the game. James Harden birthed a lot of Suns. And as much as Steph Curry changed how we play the game in regards to shooting the threes from the logo and all that type of shit, there's also a thing of all these step back, side step threes and all that. That's the beard. The beard did that. That was his bag that came out of. Dudes weren't really doing it like that prior. But once the beard had so much success with doing that, it's a copycat league. Like a lot of those threes Tatum hit in game 7 the other day were step back, side step threes. Dudes have added that to their bag. The beard has contributed to the game in that way, but that don't mean the shit look good. It looks good when it works. But when you see a dude 30 feet from the basket and he's sidestepping and chucking it up, and it clangs off the back iron, it's like, yo, dog, you couldn't take one step in. You're going to take a step further back to create space? Nasty. Nasty. All right, so where do we want to go from here? Okay, draft lottery. Let's go. All right, so you see it tonight, 8 o'clock tonight, draft lottery. And then we got game 1, Lakers Nuggets, soon after that. Here are the odds for the draft lottery. Now, I'm a proponent of the fact that there were a lot of lotteries that were rigged. The very first lottery was rigged. Was that 84 with Patrick Ewing to the Knicks? Rigged. I think the Zion draft was rigged because if you look at it, and it was not only just rigged for the number 1 pick, it was rigged for the number 2 pick. Because if you look at Zion and Ja, they went to the 2 smallest media markets in the entire league. Do you think that's a coincidence that 2 stars that the league knew these guys are going to be, if not anything, they're going to be exciting? So we're going to take the franchise with the 2 smallest media markets and drop in Zion and drop in Ja to help give them a boost. Rigged. So with Victor Wembanyama as the prize, even though, you know, if you know basketball, and I'm not saying Vic is going to be a bust. I'm not that stupid. I've watched enough of him. I've watched him play enough to be like, no, that kid's a problem. However, I think you can really have a discussion about, you know, Scoot Anderson, Brandon Miller. But fine, Vic's going to be the consent. He's going to be the pick. No matter who gets the ping pong balls in their favor tonight, Victor Wembanyama is going to be the pick. So the highest odds go to the Pistons. And they're tied, with a 3-way tie for 14% with the Rockets and the Spurs. I don't think Vic makes any sense to any one of these franchises. So again, if we're out here saying that the lottery has been rigged in the past, and if the league is trying to rig this for Big Vic to go somewhere that can be, you know, where he can really get his shit off and be a star and be groomed correctly, I don't think it's any of these franchises. And people can say stuff about the Spurs and Popovich, but that ship has sailed, bruh. The Spurs are not the Spurs anymore. If he goes to Portland, do you think Dame, will settle in and just be a Blazer for life at that point? Big Vic and Dame Dollar? Orlando, they've been collecting a lot of bodies. Could they hit? And they've had the number 1 pick a lot. That would be problematic if Orlando was to find a way to get it again. Pacers, that would be horrible for Big Vic, going from France to Indiana. Washington, Bradley Beal, Porzingis, and Big Vic. Utah, I mean, he's better than Gobert, but that will also be culture shock. Going from, he could be on the beaches of Cannes or Nice or Monaco. Then he's got to go to Salt Lake. Quite a culture shock. Dallas would mean it's rigged to me. Like, okay, so let's see how many teams can we figure out it would be rigged if Big Vic ends up there? If it's San Antonio, that means it's rigged to me. Even though they're tied for, first, I don't want to see him be a Spur, because that means like the whole Euro thing and Popovich, and like there's a lot there with the Spurs and foreign-born players. I don't like that narrative, so I would not be in favor of that. Would it be rigged if he goes to Charlotte? Because people will say, oh, Michael Jordan's the owner, even though he might be trying to cash out a piece of the team. LaMelo, Dame with Portland, would that be rigged? Orlando would not be rigged. I just don't think the league wants him in Orlando. Nobody wants him to go to Indiana. The Pels, that would be rigged. Big Vic and Zion. Toronto, the league does not want Victor Wembanyama in Toronto. OKC, it would be an amazing thing in 2K, but in real life, there's just no way this can work unless you trade some guys. The Bulls, would that be rigged? But their pick goes to somebody, right? Yeah, their pick might be conveyed to Orlando, so that could be a swap. So that would be the Bulls' luck to luck up and get the top pick, and then the shit goes to Orlando. Mavericks, this could be a Knicks swap, right? Was it top 10 protected with the Knicks? So I think it's a handful of spots where it could be rigged if Victor Wembanyama ends up there. But we'll find out tonight at 8 o'clock. If it ends up being somewhere rigged, I might pull up for an impromptu stream. I don't know. Maybe, probably not, though. To keep it a buck, I'll be locked in on Lakers, Nuggets. But yeah, Victor Wembanyama, Scoot, and that's the thing. It's not just the number 1 pick, because Scoot, to me, and I got a video on this channel talking about how I think, you could make a case for Scoot to go number 1, or it might be better to have the number 2 pick than the number 1 pick, because I think Victor Wembanyama, it's going to take him a while to get adjusted. Whereas Scoot is built like Ja Morant, Russell Westbrook, Damian Lillard. Like, he's built like these 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" guards who could be a bucket. But Scoot can also facilitate. Scoot Henderson can go. Like, so I think if you land the number 2 pick, as long as it's not a pick swap, like if you're Dallas or the Bulls, you're screwed. But if you could find a way to get to that 2nd spot, I'm not mad at missing out on Big Vic, because I got Scoot and he's ready to go right now. He's your starting point guard right next year. He's ready to go. Like, if Houston gets him, I'm not bringing back the beard. For what? I got Scoot. Now, if a team like Charlotte gets the 2nd pick, that's going to be interesting because they got LaMelo. Can LaMelo play off the ball, or do you go Brandon Miller at 2 and then Scoot falls to 3? So there's a lot of things here. Like, if Portland somehow gets the 2nd pick, Scoot is a point guard. Dame is not. Can Dame slide to the 2 and you go Scoot at 2? Or do you just go Brandon Miller and put him at the 3 or the 4? So that's why, to me, the draft really begins at 2, because Vic is going number 1. It's just a matter of which team ends up with number 1. they're kind of hamstrung into having to take Victor Wembanyama. The thing with me is, who's at number 2? Because you got 2 guys who could go number 2, in Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson. Who is going to be that? Both of those guys are really good. It's not that deep of a draft per se, but if you have a top 3 pick, it's hard to lose. It's hard to lose because Victor Wembanyama, I think, will eventually be that dude they keep claiming to be. I just think it's going to take a year or 2. Scoot is ready right now. There's no shaking my confidence in Scoot Henderson. I watched enough of him at G League Ignite, and those games with him and Vic, I was more impressed with Vic. I was more impressed with Scoot than Vic, to keep it a buck with you. And I put a video on this channel admitting that. Like, I came out of those games, the little showcase. I know Scoot got hurt in the second game that they had, but that first game when it was all the hype of Vic and Scoot, I was like, oh no, Scoot can go right now. Yeah, Vic, I mean, he's 7'5", you know, he's a freak of nature. He's the next evolution. But how much better than Porzingis is he going to be? Because that's the only dude I could think of based off me watching some of his games and stuff, especially his overseas games. It's a lot of Porzingis in him. But how much better can he be than Porzingis? Because Porzingis is good. A borderline all-star. How much better is Victor going to be? He's better from 3, allegedly. So maybe that puts him over the hump. But I don't know. I don't think it's a guarantee. Okay, so we did that. Let's see what we got here. Let me make sure there's no NBA stuff that I'm missing before I pivot to NFL. And there's actually some decent stories with NFL. Okay. Yeah, no, nothing on the NBA. Super good there. All right, so NFL. Joe Burrow is currently working, the Bengals and Joe Burrow are currently working on a contract extension. Burrow mentions that the team has other players that also deserve to get paid. That's always on your mind. You want to be a focal point. We got the sound. We could go ahead and play that. Let's see. Let's run that back. That's very low.
How involved are you with kind of those talks and giving input? And is there a timeline in which you'd like to see that potentially done by?
Yeah, I'm involved. That's, it's in the works. That's not really something that I like to play out in the media. That's something, just the way I think they want to do business, I want to do business. We prefer to keep that between us.
On that note, is there something that...
Well, here's the problem. Mike Brown, owner of the Cincinnati Bengals, is one of the cheapest owners in all of professional sports. Now, Burrow might be the exception to the rule because he's so damn vital to what they do there. But he is no, and this is the owner Brown, he is notorious for how cheap he is. This is going to be the test of his cheapness. Will he allow Joe Burrow to get the contract that he deserves based off what Lamar Jackson and everyone else has pushed the market to be?
Matters to you most with that? Like, 'cause there's a million different ways that these things can be sliced. Is there something that is the main thing that you want that matters to you with this deal?
I think there's a lot of different ways it could work out. We'll see how it plays out.
He ducked that question. He ducked that question masterfully. Because dude is basically saying, what's important to you in this contract? Is it guaranteed money? Is it a 3-year cash flow? Is it, backloaded money? Is it incentives? Is it roster bonuses? Like, what's the most important? Is it the length of time? Like, he tried to get Joe Burrow to give him some, and Burrow sidestepped that question masterfully.
There's obviously a lot of you guys in your draft class, Jamal's going to have an issue. As you're going through these and kind of giving input, how cognizant are you of being able to kind of keep the core together and being able to...
Sorry that the audio is low on the question asking part.
Yeah, it's definitely, whenever you have guys on the team that need to be paid, that's always on your mind. You want that to be a focal point, and so we're working to make that happen.
All right, so basically the dude was like, there's other guys up for extensions and trying to get their bread as well. How do you feel about that now that you're obviously you're working on your contract extension, and clearly he's doing the team first thing as the QB and the leader of that team. So, but Joe Burrow is trying to get the bag, and who's going to get the bag first? Is it going to be Mahomes, who is trying to rework his deal as well? Or is it going to be Joe Burrow, or will Trevor Lawrence or Justin Herbert slide in there and get the bag first? And again, will it be a traditional bag that has the adjusted value and all of that stuff, or will it just be a Deshaun Watson type deal? I think, sadly, unless Mahomes does it, I don't think we're ever going to get quarterbacks to get fully guaranteed money because they're too scared to jump out there and fight for it for themselves. But Joe Burrow, next up to get the bag. Davante Adams on the Raiders front office. We don't see eye to eye on what we think is best for us right now. That is pretty damning. I'm going to have to buy into this and try to be as optimistic as possible. It's not what I expected to happen, but it's something that's the reality now. Now, the problem with this is he didn't know Derek Carr could have been released. He really thought that team was going to believe in Derek Carr long term. He thought that Darren Waller was going to be a piece going forward. I mean, I thought Darren Waller was going to be a piece going forward, but man, Davante Adams, I don't think he's a trade candidate, but these comments are very, very poignant to just have out here. We don't see eye to eye on what we think is best for us right now. Hella problematic. Hella problematic. I don't know if you are the Raiders. You can't do anything right now, right? Because you got Jimmy G, you got Josh Jacobs is on the franchise tag. Davante Adams has a ridiculous bag coming his way for the foreseeable future. The Raiders are in a tough spot, and we know how cash poor they are. And that's why they got Tom Brady trying to buy in to get a piece of the team. It's going to be rough there in Vegas. They should be printing money with a NFL team in Vegas, and especially a franchise that has a fan base like the Raiders. That should be a layup of all layups to get your bread up. But for whatever reason, the Raiders are as cash poor as they come. This is a story that's off the beaten path. A little bit of MMA here. Francis Ngannou, who was the UFC heavyweight champion, has signed a deal with the PFL. And he has taken a player empowerment stance. He has taken a stance and has leveraged himself to getting real equity. The deal includes equity in the company and allows him to compete in boxing matches. Ngannou will also sit on the company's advisory board and serve as chairman of the PFL Africa. He'll make his PFL debut in 2024. So this is a athlete that reached his apex, saw his value, and then once he realized the UFC, which has some of the worst payout rates in all of sports. I get mad about the NFL and their salaries. Don't get me started on the MMA. It is worse. Those dudes get 20% of the bread. It's insane. You're literally getting knocked the fuck around the ring and you only get 20%. Absolutely a joke. But Ngannou realized his worth and fought for it and sat out, more importantly, and refused to buy into UFC and all the nonsense. And now he has a deal where he gets equity in the company, and it also allows him to do a side project that he wants to do, which is box. I think this is a huge deal, and I hope that this deal really gets a lot more publicity, because this is the type of shit of taking the power in your hands and proving your worth. UFC wants to keep whoring me out for 20%. Nah, love, I'm good. I'm good, love, enjoy. I'm going to go over here and get ownership in the back end. And also, I'm going to sit on the board when we open up the division in my home country, my home continent. Power play for Francis Ngannou. Salute to him. All right. Let's see here. We talked about that. Yep. Oh, let me hit the chat. What's up, Boogie Down? Burrow better take that team-friendly deal. I don't think he's the type of QB that can carry a average roster. I think he needs that elite talent surrounding him. Will agree to disagree there. I don't think he's average. I think obviously he's had Jamar Chase everywhere he's went, so that's a thing, right? But I think ultimately he's still good enough to beat him. Like even before he got to LSU, he was at Ohio State before that, so he was highly regarded prior. I think Burrow's up there. He's a top 10 QB, and he should get paid like a top 10 QB. The problem is the best QB in the league is the 11th highest paid QB. But, you know, I'm crazy for wanting quarterbacks to get fully guaranteed money when the best QB is the 11th highest paid QB. Cool story, bro. Let's see. Anything else on the timeline before we go crazy? McAfee. Everyone's going wild about McAfee. We led the stream with that. McAfee's getting a ridiculous bag. He's walking away from $120 million from FanDuel to join the four-letter network. The show is expected to remain on YouTube, and McAfee will bring his whole crew with him. So salute to him again for that, because some people, I can tell you, working in this industry, a lot of talent sometimes they'll give lip service, pause to how important behind-the-scenes people are. But very few will do this. I'm going to bring all of y'all with me. Y'all help me get that 120 mil. I'm going to bring all of y'all with me now to the four-letter network. So it's a huge deal. I can tell you that. He's getting 10 mil per year and all that. So, you know, to me, it's a slight give back in bread depending on the splits. Maybe the FanDuel deal had some funny money in it that we're not privy to. Maybe it's not just a straight up 4 years, $120 million deal. So that means 30 mil a year. Maybe there's some funny money there, like an NFL contract. I mean, he was an NFL punter. Maybe he's used to that. But he's going to earn more than 10 mil per year at the four-letter network. That puts him up there with Friday Smith and all them other dudes. Boogie Down. I'm saying if you have, or if you gave, I'm assuming you mean gave, if you gave Lamar Jackson those weapons in Cincy, he'd have a Super Bowl by now. Probably. At least would have been to one, like Burrow. Probably would have been to one. You know, I think the issue, and the same thing happened with Cincy with Burrow, is the defense. The defense has been better in Baltimore than it has been in Cincy. So it's a give and take. Hey, but Boogie Down. This is Lamar's year, right? He's got the weapons. OBJ, you know, Bateman, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, J.K. Dobbins. Like, this should be a new system with Monken, who is predicated on balanced offense. Like, Lamar should put up ridiculous numbers this year. Ridiculous numbers. And I'm here for it. And I'll be doing football kickback, you know, in next season. I was doing live streams. I would come on after the 4 o'clock games would be over and recap, you know, all the day's action. I might try to flip that. And, you know, now that the red zone is going to be here on YouTube, maybe we do some watch alongs. I don't know. Maybe we'll figure something out. But I'll definitely be doing some live streams around NFL. So I'll be right here every week tracking Lamar. So be sure to pull up. I'm pretty sure you will. But we're not missing out on anything. We'll see the draft lottery at 8 o'clock tonight. Lakers Nuggets game 1 is tonight. I'll bid y'all do there. I do have to make some runs. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and we'll do that. Check out some clips on the channel. I got some shorts as well. If you're into the short form content as well, check that out. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure to do that. If you're watching this on a replay, feel free to comment on anything from the earlier topics all the way throughout. I will be in the comments if you leave some. So I'm always here for that. I know that, you know, I want to connect and build with people. So I salute y'all for pulling up and tapping in. This has been another edition of Timeline T. I'll see y'all tomorrow, 4 o'clock Eastern on the Sam D. Peace.